A lot of people working in prisons, they assume that prisoners are trying to get away with something. No, you're telling me you're in agony, but I know you're not. You're just trying to get away. You telling me you need painkillers? I don't think you really do. You're telling me you need detention in the middle of the night? I don't think you really do. I often hear from people who've been waiting for months, if not years, to see the GP. Not being taken out for appointments, they're due to have some very serious operation. I'm sure that there are occasions when this, has some extremely serious consequences. I mean, it would be unlikely not to lead to that.
In 2019, 21-year-old Fikuzani Shiri died with HIV while serving his sentence here at Chelmsford Prison.
Claims of gross negligence were raised at Shiri's pre-inquest review. The lawyer on behalf of his family said he wanted to know whether Shiri had been given access to his HIV drugs and whether he would have survived should they have been administered sooner. The government publishes reports from inquests held for deaths that occur in prison. They raise matters of concern and suggest to prison staff and prison healthcare providers how these deaths could be prevented in the future. We analysed 230 of these reports since 2013 and found that a third of all concerns raised cited physical healthcare mismanagement and the miscommunication of medical records. The Prisoners Advice Service told us that of the 3,622 records opened so far this year, 371 listed medical healthcare issues on their database. And 32% of prisons inspected between 2020 and 2022 by Her Majesty's Prison Inspectorate reported issues surrounding medical mismanagement, healthcare access, medical staff shortages, and delays in accessing treatment.
So we saw on the National AIDS Trust website on your page that there was an anonymous account of someone who had been in prison and convinced themselves that they were going to die due to a lack of access to treatment.
We do hear of and are sometimes contacted by people living with HIV in prison who are experiencing issues accessing their treatment. Sometimes there is an interruption in the treatment that people receive upon arrival at prison. Whereas other people experience issues accessing treatment throughout the duration of their incarceration. Most recent testing data available showed that people who are tested on arrival in prison were 10 times more likely to test positive for HIV than people testing in sexual health services.
The prevalence of bloodborne viruses such as HIV are 4 times higher amongst people in UK prisons than in the general population. Data obtained through Freedom of Information requests to the UK Health Security Agency revealed that over the past 5 years there were 93 new HIV diagnoses in English prisons alone. But authorities do not have a prison death rate category relating to bloodborne viruses. All deaths relating to HIV are declared as naturally caused. This makes it difficult to assess the HIV death rate in English prisons. However, the Prison and Probation's Ombudsman shared with us an exclusive investigation which found a second death occurring from HIV 2 years after Shiri, at the same prison to which he had been transferred. Panksefi served time at this prison and knows what it's like to live with HIV behind bars.
Whilst I was in prison, an individual that I know that I was in prison with was diagnosed as positive. But he wasn't due to then see a consultant for about a month or so, which is a long time when you're just, sort of diagnosed and told, right, look, you're positive and you'll see someone in a month. Whilst he knew lots of people that were positive, he didn't know enough about it himself to feel comfortable. And so he absolutely freaked. There was no counselling for him at all. There was no help. There are so many different things or aspects to being positive that aren't necessarily the same as somebody that isn't. So I remember when I was diagnosed, my consultant said to me, I will allow you to miss your dose once a year. That's it. Each tablet that you take is a brick in a wall. And as that wall is built up, you get to a point where it's solid. That's when somebody would be classed as undetectable, where that virus can't penetrate any further. Every dose that's missed is a brick being knocked out. Not every prison, like I said, has access to a sexual health nurse, and so the general nursing staff don't always understand those subtle nuances that are required when you are positive.
Only 24 prisons run by NHS trusts responded to our request for their policy on sexual health nursing. Of these, 11 prisons had no sexual health nurse and 6 had one who worked part-time.
They don't want to give out condoms, because of course by doing that they feel as though they're encouraging people to have sex. Sort of I remember there was one particular prison that I visited that where they were donated a vast amount of flavoured condoms, which they didn't want to give out because they felt that in itself would encourage people to have sex.
We also discovered that only 40% of NHS-run prisons make condoms available upon request to prisoners. The remainder of cases mean that condoms must be prescribed, therefore leading to longer GP waiting times to access contraception. Prisoners can be disciplined for having more than 3 condoms at any one time, for failing to dispose of them. In some private prisons, they are only provided if a prisoner exchanges them in a 1-for-1 swap. So could this stigmatisation, medical mismanagement, or policy pitfalls of HIV be what led to Shiri's death in custody? We made contact with Sophie Strachan. Sophie found out she was HIV positive while serving time at Pentonville Prison. Her experience of living with HIV as an inmate drove her to campaign for equal access to treatment for prisoners when she was released. With her charity Sophia Forum, she has since worked on governmental and advisory panels helping to develop HIV policy in the UK.
There is an inconsistency in practice, and we know firsthand that not every single person is offered a test when they enter the prison estate, despite that being set out in the guidelines. We also know that people who are living with HIV in UK prisons do not always get consistent access to their antiretrovirals, and that's a violation of a person's basic human right, and in the context of people living with HIV is life-saving medication. I've heard of women who have known that they're going to be sentenced, so they go to court with their antiretrovirals. They are then taken off them at reception in prison. It could either be 24 or 48 hours and that medication is returned, or it's been weeks or months.
The pandemic has delayed Shiri's full inquest, and until it is held we cannot know for sure whether Shiri's death was due to failures in the treatment of his positive HIV status in prison. But with last year being the deadliest on record for prisons in England and Wales, it is no wonder that campaigners like Sophie and Pank are concerned that more needs to be done.